Hey guys, welcome back to Dark Souls 2. My name is Tom, and you're probably wondering why I'm back in the Forest of the Fallen Giants. Now, this is because we have a few little errands to run before we get on with the Iron Keep. Namely, we have to go to the other side of the Lost Bastille and get the Dull Ember, then give it to McDuff so we can infuse some weapons later on when we need to. There is one thing that I need to correct from one of the previous episodes though, and that is me saying that the giant bird that takes you from the nest to the Lost Bastille was a raven, and it may have had some connections with Velka and Sin, but it turns out that the bird is just a giant eagle, and not a raven at all, as I presumed. Now, it's been a long time since I originally played Dark Souls 2. I played it when it first came out in 2014, and then I played it for a few months after that, but I stopped, and Scholar of the First Sin is the most of it that I've played in a long time, so forgive me for these slight mistakes that I might make. I will usually do all my fact-checking on these small little things before I upload the episode, or rather before I even render the episodes, just so I can go back and change my commentary if I need to actually being factually correct. So these won't happen that often, but they will if I've had to rush an episode or anything, or get one out, and I haven't had time to basically proofread the episode's dialogue. So it might happen every now and then, but it won't happen that often. If it does happen every once in a blue moon, just do forgive me for that, because I either didn't have the time to go back and sit through half an hour of my own gameplay and commentary, or I just overlooked it and didn't think about what I was saying properly. And here we are at the Lost Bastille again, on the other side. Now, these two chests were not here in the original game. One of them holds the Dull Ember. The Dull Ember used to be at the Iron Keep, and it used to be on a corpse that you had to jump to. And it was a little bit of an iffy jump, like you could die easily if you didn't hit the angle correctly. And once again, I'm just checking if they're mimics, because I don't know which ones are mimics, since a lot of the chest locations have been changed in this game. So, back to the eagle for just a second. I don't actually have an idea of what kind of lore connections that eagle would have to the pursuer, or the wider game in general. I don't know if the eagle is referenced anywhere in the game at any point. It's kinda just here, and its only relation is to the pursuer. The bird may not actually even be an eagle, it may in fact be a hawk, but I don't know if there is any relation or reference to hawks in the game either. We do get something later on called the Hawk Ring, but that is a reference to a bowman that is in the lore of the wider world of Drain Lake. But if it is either one of those two, an eagle or a hawk, doesn't really matter. We can deduce that it probably lives in the Forest of the Fallen Giants because it has a nest there. Now, it either lives in the Forest of the Fallen Giants, or it lives in the Lost Bastille, because it only goes to those two places in the game. Other than here and there, the eagle isn't seen at all. It only serves as a purpose of transport for the pursuer, and speaking of the pursuer, we're about to fight another one now. I'm not actually quite sure, well, I wasn't quite sure how many were in the Lost Bastille when I first made my comments about the pursuers, but apparently there's 4 of them. This is the 3rd one that I've fought. I'm not sure where the 4th one is. It may be in Belfry Luna, but I'm pretty sure I've covered all of the Lost Bastille now, and this is the 3rd one that I've found. But anyway, the eagle serves only as transport for the pursuer, even though pursuers kind of have their own certain spots in the world anyway, like this one just popped up here. But for some reason, the pursuer that came to fight us first was flown in on an eagle. I honestly don't know if the eagle has any lore relevance whatsoever, because I haven't done that much research on it, because I've never really gone in depth this much with this game. I haven't thought about every single element of the game itself, and the cutscenes and what have you. But the eagle could just be to make the pursuer look more badass in the boss fight, like he gets flown in by an eagle and dropped into the battle arena. And here I'm just looking at the covetous silver serpent ring. Basically this just increases the amount of souls you get, and it briefly just talks about the god of greed as well, which is named Xandro. And it doesn't really talk about much else, it just tells you what the ring does when equipped. One thing I do find interesting about Dark Souls 2 is that they felt the need to add so many other gods, like Xandro, the god of greed. They pretty much added a god for every type of kind of element, whether it be greed or pride or death or something like that. In Dark Souls 1, we only really had the god of death, which was Nito. Or, well, they're not really gods, they're more like lords. But they still are referenced in the game sometimes as gods, because they were the first lords around during the first Age of Fire. So they kind of made the world what it was. And therefore they were kind of hailed as both gods, kings, and lords. And in Dark Souls 1, there weren't nearly this many gods referenced. There were a lot of lords referenced, like Flann, Gwyndolin, Guinevere, Nito, Gwyn, the Four Kings, Seath, and the Witch of Izalith. But then again, I haven't played Dark Souls 1 in quite a while, probably even longer than Dark Souls 2, well, the original. So I probably am a bit rusty here. Now, what we're going to do here is get McDuff off that chest, and to do that you need to light a torch and then light the sconce right here, and then you'll have to go rest at the bonfire to reset his position back to the anvil where he'll be hammering next to the sconce you lit. And basically what this allows you to do is open the chest he is sitting on. I'm just going to let this dialogue play out, even though it's a little boring, but it's better to get it right now than later.
We've got a wild one here. Shape up. Shape up, I say. Oh, that's it, yes. That's the way. Dear flame, how brightly you burn. Flame, I smell flame upon you. I'm McDuff the blacksmith. All I want is a little flame. So, hand that ember to me. Right now, you imbecile. What a marvelous ember. You've got stones, I pray. Give me stones, and I'll fortify your gear.
So, that's McDuff. And if you can't tell already, he is going mad because of his addiction to the flame. Now, it's hard to say what flame this is, whether it's just wanting a new ember or something like that, and he's going insane from the undead curse, or it might be something more closely related to the first flame itself. I do have a theory on McDuff and who he is, and it's a bit of a stretch, but if this land is in any way related to Dark Souls 1 or Lordran, it could be possible that McDuff is a distant ancestor of Andre of Astora from Dark Souls 1, who was also a blacksmith, and was also rumored to be a relative of Gwyn. Both Gwyn and McDuff covet a flame, so that's pretty much the only relation I can draw there. And like I said, it's a bit of a stretch, and it's just a simple idea that doesn't really hold much value. I just thought I'd bring it up in case anyone was thinking the same thing. But like I've said in previous episodes, if a theory doesn't really hold much value in my eyes, I usually won't bring it up. But this time I just thought it was a bit of a coincidence, so I thought I'd just bring it up anyway in case someone had a similar thought. Either way, it doesn't really matter because McDuff is a bit of a lesser character, and the only purpose he really serves is to infuse the weapons that we bring him. There's only two blacksmiths in this entire game, Lenegrast and McDuff, and over those two, McDuff is the only one that is able to infuse weapons. And here we are finally at the Iron Keep. Now, this place has changed a little bit with the new enemy AI improvements and the new enemy placements. There is a new Alon Knight on the bridge, which is quite cool because this is where most duels usually take place in Dark Souls 2, so they're giving us an actual enemy to start that portion of the level off, which is cool. There's also an enemy invasion here. I think there's meant to be two at the same time, but I don't think two can invade at the same time, although I'm not sure on that. Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. But yeah, Fencer Sharon right here almost fucking destroys me. Almost. And then Armorer Dennis invades later on again, and I destroy him, so it's 1 for 1 in the invasions department. Now, anyone that's planning on playing Scholar of the First Sin and going through the Iron Keep, I have to warn you that this place can make you lose your sanity quite fast. The new improvements, quote unquote, that they've made to the level are fucking crazy, and they are at least 5 times worse than before. Or maybe worse is the wrong word. They're at least 5 times more difficult than they were before. The new enemy placements and the improved enemy AI and the radius of which the enemies activate in, and the draw distance of them is a lot bigger and a lot more difficult. Like, for instance, the Alon Knights that are within the Iron Keep, they get pulled from like halfway across the level to your location. And if you're not careful, you can end up fighting like 5 of them at the same time, which is fucking crazy. Like, we're about to see how they attack. Now imagine 5 of those attacking you at the same time, and it even happens to me later on because I'm careless and I don't know the level layout, the level placements of all the new knights yet, so I get ganked at one point. I am a little bummed that they didn't fix some of the overhead tracking in this game, like when the knights go for that overhead attack like that. That still tracks you by at least a 45-degree angle, which is a bit annoying. Well, it's more than a bit annoying, it's really annoying. Because if you don't have enough adaptability or enough iframes to get out of the way of that attack properly, it'll hit you almost every single time, which is bad if you don't have a shield, because that basically means that you're going to lose a lot of HP very, very fast, especially if there's 3 to 5 of them around you, all attacking at the same time from different angles. Have some fun trying to dodge that. Anyway, here's a new NPC for you.
What? Who are you? Who, me? I'm Magarold. Who else? What? Have a look at my wares.
Magarold is just one of many explorers who collect rare items. He is also the leader, or so it would seem, leader of the Dragon Remnants Covenant, and he actually has quite a few items that would be of use to us in his inventory, along with the carvings as well that say things when you drop them on the ground. These carvings are from Dark Souls 1. They were made by a giant called Hawkeye Goth, and he was actually one of Gwyn's 4 knights.
I'm mainly a treasure hunter, you see. I'm only a merchant on the side. A room about, looking for a find, following me instincts. I don't care what a thing's worth. What matters is whether it grabs me. Do I enjoy what I do? Well, that's a good question. I suppose I must. I've been doing it for ages. There's good iron in these parts. An old king even used it to build a castle. But the thing was too heavy, and it slowly sank into the ground. Fire spouted from the earth, and the place turned into this. At least, that's what I've been told. Not a bad story, eh? So, what'll it be? Anything for you today? Hey, you know that old fella with the hulking blue sword? He talks really highly of it. I got a feeling it's a fake. I didn't want to disappoint him, so I just sort of talked around it. Let me just say, there are lots of legendary swords out there. Have you heard of the shrine on the eastern edge of Drang Lake? Built to honor the dragons, they say. If only I knew how to get there. I'd go and I'd comb it for goodies. I'm mainly a treasure hunter, you see. I suppose. Cheers.
Magarold talks a little about the lore surrounding the Old Iron King and the Iron Keep, and how it sank into the ground after it became too heavy because the Old Iron King used so much iron to fortify this castle. And now that we're on the subject, we can talk about the more extensive lore surrounding the Iron Keep, and also the Alon Knights. Now, we've talked a lot about the Old Iron King already, to do with the Huntsman's Copse, the Lost Bastille, etc. But this is the first we're seeing of the Alon Knights, and the first we're going to learn of Sir Alon. As the tale goes, the Old Iron King once held banquets and events for all the guests that would come to his kingdom from distant lands. And one day, a traveller from an eastern land came to the Iron Keep, and the Iron King realized that he was a traveller unlike any other. This traveller was known as Sir Alon. During the time of which Sir Alon arrived, the Old Iron King was merely just a prince, and his kingdom was not large at all. Sir Alon helped this little established prince become what he is today. Well, what he was. The Alon Knights that we see in the Iron Keep are those knights that were trained by Sir Alon himself. I'm unsure if they're actual people that have turned hollow, or if they were suits of iron created by the Iron King, given sentience and then trained by Sir Alon, but either way it doesn't really matter, because now all that remains of the Iron Keep is a sunken memory. Sir Alon helped build the Iron King's kingdom up to what it is today, but at the peak of the Iron King's reign, Sir Alon left in search of distant lands, and it's mostly unclear to why he did this. It may have been a quarrel between the Iron King and Sir Alon, or it could have been that Sir Alon just never stayed in one place for long, and the Iron King knew this, allowing Sir Alon to move on from the Iron Keep once his work was done. Either way, upon the departure of Sir Alon, the Iron King bequeathed Sir Alon's name to his knights that he had helped train. But unfortunately, along with the castle, the knights were also subsumed by the flames that overtook the Iron Keep itself. These kind of themes may sound familiar to you from Dark Souls 1, wherein Gwyn took his Silver Knights to fight in the war with the dragons, and they came back charred and blackened. Therefore, they earned the name of the Black Knights. The Alon Knights here serve the same type of purpose. They were the old Iron King's greatest assets, or rather greatest warriors, and upon their descent into the flames, their armor became charred and blackened as well. There is something quite interesting to note though, and that is that the Alon Knight captains actually bear the symbol of Vendrick and Drangleic on their shoulders. The most likely reasoning for this is that after the fall of the old Iron King, Vendrick took the Alon Knights, or at least some of them, into his employ to guard his kingdom as well. Because, as we have already seen, Vendrick was very fond of taking warriors and enemies from other locations around Drangleic and adding them to his army, including the old ironclad soldiers, the Alon Knights, and the Mastodon warriors. Now, as you can probably notice, the Alon Knights here are getting pulled from like halfway across this area. This guy was up on the third ledge that the great bow wielding Alon Knight captain is on, and his range of attack was still pulled towards me, and I was nowhere near him. This is how large the new radius for enemies getting pulled is, and I've got to say it's quite ridiculous. The bowmen make sense. They should definitely be able to shoot me from that range and see me from that range, but the melee fighters probably shouldn't be able to see me and be pulled by me as soon as I step through the door to this area. That's a bit of overkill, in my opinion. I do die quite a lot in this area as well, and having to run through this and kill every enemy every time you die, it gets so annoying, and my sanity, well, not my sanity, but at least my patience was pushed at one point to the edge, and that is the first time that has happened in Dark Souls for me, probably ever, including in Dark Souls 1. I have never been this annoyed with an area up until now, which is kind of sad to say because I loved this area in the original Dark Souls 2. I thought the enemy placements were pretty much perfect. I didn't think they had to be changed at all, and just changing them to increase the difficulty of this area and the time it takes to get through it is a pain in the ass. Because basically just to get through this area, you need to kill everything in the vicinity, otherwise they will chase you to the boss door and you will get killed before you even get a chance to enter the Smelter Demon boss. At least in the Dark Souls 2 original version, you didn't have to kill everything, literally, in the entire area. You could just leave 1 or 2 or 3 Alon Knights off by themselves and they wouldn't do anything to you if you tried to enter the boss room. But this isn't the case with the Iron Keep in Scholar of the First Sin. If you try to approach that boss door without killing off either of the 2 Alon captains that stand guard, they will issue pretty much an attack on your life, and you will not be able to get in that boss room fast enough because 2 Alon Knights will come for you and attack you, and then there will be 2 Alon captains shooting you with great bows as well, so it's quite difficult to actually get in there without killing off everything in the area. But other than that, the area is still as great as ever. I just don't like the new enemy placements as much. Anyway, this is Rosabeth.
I'm fine. I think... No. I'm fine. Really, I am. My name is Rosabeth. Thank you so much for rescuing me. Oh, you're that traveler. I still haven't thanked you. Well, I'm quite a hand at pyromancy. So perhaps you could consider this my thanks. I was attacked and turned to stone, I think. I owe you my life. If you had not come... Oh, I feel shameful wearing these rags. I hate to burden you further, as you've already saved my life. But just look at me. My clothes are in tatters. Do you have any clothing that you could spare? I'll take anything, whatever you don't need. I'm not particular when it comes to apparel. Anything at all will do. Just put it on the ground, and I'll change into it later.
Rosabeth is from the same place as Carhillion of the Fold, but since we couldn't talk to Carhillion because we didn't have high enough intelligence, I couldn't get his dialogue to learn that. And as you will see, Rosabeth is a pyromancer, so she is the one that you want to go to if you want to upgrade your pyromancy flame. I think there's another person that can do that as well. I might be incorrect in assuming that, but yeah, she upgrades your pyromancy flame. That is basically her only use. And you also might be wondering why I'm here at the gate to the Shaded Woods. I'm here because I want to get another Estus Flask shard, and it's right behind this door. It's just in a chest beyond this point. The reason I couldn't get it earlier was because I needed another fragrant branch of yore, but now that I have 4 of them, I could do it. Anyway, she has a bit more dialogue, I'll let it play out, and then we'll get back to the Iron Keep.
I have my very own teacher. His name is Carhillion of the Fold, a famed sorcerer in Melfia, our hometown. I was fascinated by sorcery, and so, well, he's so unique, you see. When he set out for Drang Lake, I couldn't let him go alone. But we were separated, quite early on, I'm afraid. I'm rather unskilled. My lord probably ditched me. But, oddly, I'm a fast learner when it comes to pyromancy. What we're fascinated by, and we're skilled at, are not always the same thing. Why can't I just focus on what I truly enjoy? Oh dear, I shouldn't be so choosy. It's hardly my place. I have my very own his name but thank you so much. I'm very happy for this gift. After I change into this, I'm heading for Majula. I'm not sure where I might find the Lord, but perhaps Majula is my best chance.
Okay, so she also tells us that Melfia, her homeland, was in turmoil and a war with another land. We also learned earlier in the game, talking to Lucatiel, that her homeland, the homeland of Mirror, was also locked in war with another land. It would seem as if both lands, Mirror and Melfia, were the ones fighting. And I suppose Rosabeth and Lucatiel both left those homelands to seek better things rather than being involved in war. And to this day, I'm still freaked out by these giant ballsack monsters. I realize that the things that hang down are just their stomachs, because they eat so much. Like, when you pull that lever, you're meant to get trapped in here with them, and I suppose the reason they have such big stomachs is because they've eaten so much, and their stomachs have grown so big from having so much in their bellies. And I suppose anyone that comes in here that tries to pull that lever, they eat. And that's their source of food. And later on we also see them feeding on other things, so it makes sense that that would happen. Anyway, Estus Flask shard in hand, we are going to go to the bonfire and get back to the Iron Keep so we can fight the boss and finish the episode off on a good note. But just before I do that, I'm just going to fast forward quickly so I can jump up here and grab all these items from behind these doors, even though there's only one item. I did go to McDuff for a little second there, but it wasn't to do much. I think I actually just incorrectly went to the wrong location. I don't know, I thought I needed to go to McDuff for some reason, but turns out I didn't. And we are back at the Iron Keep. Now, this is probably going to be one of many run-throughs of this part of the Iron Keep up to the boss. So I don't know how many parts of it I'll skip. I'll probably leave in most of the important parts, like the invasions, and I don't know why I thought I had more fire defense than I did. But that was a really bad idea on my part. And this is what I mean. I'm probably going to have a lot of deaths in this part just right here. So I'm going to skip and cut out a lot of runbacks, and probably going to have to fast forward quite a few things as well. The parts that I do fast forward during these runbacks, however, will still have me talking over them rather than the music, because we still do have a little bit to talk about, and because of these things, this episode will most likely end up being a bit longer than previous ones, yet not up to the length of an hour or something, maybe like 45 minutes-ish, because of, well, fucking Armor Dennis here decides he wants to invade right when I'm trying to get to the boss again. I did like the fact that in Dark Souls 1, NPC invaders couldn't actually come into your world if you were hollow, but in Dark Souls 2, they can invade you whether you're hollow or not. So, like, if you wanted to just go through the level without being invaded at all, you'd have to use a human effigy on the bonfire, which I don't want to do. And I would rather just go hollow through the level rather than do that. But they've taken that mechanic away in Dark Souls 2 for some reason. Don't really know why. I mean, it's good for invaders that they can still invade people while the people they're invading are hollow, but I think it worked better in Dark Souls 1 in that if you didn't want to do PvP or be invaded, you could just go hollow for the rest of the game. And it kind of would help being hollow doing these playthroughs if you weren't getting invaded every 10 seconds, especially with the internet that I have. Like, for example, there's a part in the Shaded Woods where I get invaded by the same guy 3 times in a row, and I can't actually land. I do almost kill him at one point, but he ends up killing me because it lags and I get killed by one of his throwing knives. And because of the lag and the ping that I have, I'm unable to judge correctly when and where he's going to throw that throwing knife, and I end up dying to it anyway. And that invasion happens 3 times within a period of about 10 minutes. And the reason I don't use a human effigy on the bonfires is because the NPC invasions that happen, I still feel the need to show those on camera because some of them are quite important, like the Nameless Usurper and the Forlorn. They still need to be seen, but then I run the risk of also getting invaded by real players and being unable to defeat any of them because I can't even discern where or when they're going to attack. And more often than not, I will get backstabbed from halfway across the map or halfway across an area. So having the option to go hollow to avoid those invasions would actually be good, because at any point I can just go back to being human, do those NPC invasions that I would need to see, and then just go back to being hollow again, and I wouldn't have to put a human effigy into every bonfire just so I can't get invaded. Don't get me wrong though, I do vastly enjoy PvP in this game. It's quite great. It's just that when you have an internet connection like mine, and you're trying to do a playthrough like this, you're kind of biased towards wanting to not be invaded. And when you are, it just makes the whole process of doing this playthrough a whole lot longer. And yeah, the easiest way to do this would just be to play offline, but what I'm talking about isn't about that. It's not about just going offline to avoid PvP. I'm talking about the mechanic from Dark Souls 1, wherein you would go hollow, and therefore you wouldn't be allowed to partake in any online interactions, or any summoning actually, in general. And I just feel like that was a more streamlined approach rather than having an offline option or the burn a human effigy option to avoid online interaction. Just go through the entire game hollow and you won't have a problem, unless you need to summon someone. Therefore, use some humanity and become human again. I think, if I'm not wrong, the only options, online options you had in Dark Souls 1 whilst hollow were invading or being summoned by someone, and if you successfully were summoned by someone and helped them defeat a boss or fulfilled your purpose, you would turn back to being human. And while some of that is still the case in Dark Souls 2, like the summoning and invading, I think it worked a lot better in Dark Souls 1. But I mean, the vastness and difference between these two games' online aspects are not very big at all. They're mostly the same. The only real differing thing in Dark Souls 2 is that you can be invaded when you're hollow. Oh, and soul memory, but I won't go into soul memory, that's a painful topic all by itself. They should have just left it with soul level. I don't see the reason that they had to create soul memory in the first place, even with the ring that they added in Scholar of the First Sin that helps you control your soul memory a little better. It's still quite a broken mechanic. Anyway, enough about that. This is the part that I was talking about with the two Alon Knight captains. As you can see, there is a bowman at either end, and in between there are 3 different Alon Knights. Luckily that one walks off the ledge for me so I can get a turn soloing this Alon Knight captain, but there is still another captain up that end as well, and there are 2 sneaky knights above him that will drop down and slaughter me when I get close enough. They have actually changed the layout of this walkway as well. There used to be a slight gap between one of these 2 parts, well, the part that I'm standing now and the part that I was just on. Between here and there was a gap that you had to jump to get across to this part here where the Zweihander sword was. I'm just going to transition here instead of doing a run back, so you can see the probably safest way to complete this part. If you have a bow, this is kind of the slower way to do it, rather than jumping over the bridge and probably losing a lot of life and life gems in the process, but it's the safest way to do it. It takes a little longer, but you don't have to use any life gems, or you probably won't have to use any life gems unless you let the Alon Knights get close enough to you. And since I die a lot here, you guessed it, I have to do this about 7 or 10 times just to get back to that door. Now most of the time these guys will run on the walkway stairs here to get up to you, but every now and then they will just run off into the lava and you won't have to deal with them at all, and you can just shoot the Alon Knight captain and then walk up and then kill the other one as well. The best way to deal with the knights that jump down on the other side where the right hand Alon captain is just to shoot them with the bow, and their draw distance will come all the way to you, and it'll probably take them a while to get to you, but they will eventually get there, and you can just kill them off like you do the rest. I'm basically just showing you this in case you are having trouble with this area and need a safer way of going about things to get through this part. This way, you can just shoot the Alon Knight captains, wait for the Alon Knights to run to you, and then kill them one by one on the stairs, or they will even walk off by themselves as this one does here, and then the next one follows in tow. They only really do this when you have a lock on them though, so don't expect them to do that every time, because usually their AI is smart enough to actually walk on the stairs. And as I said, this part is the longest way of doing it, because if you drop onto those stairs, you have to pull the crank above, open the room where the flames are, and then take the ladder all the way up and out just to get back around to the bridge. Now, I'm going to fast forward one more time until we're almost to the Smelter Demon, because unfortunately there's not too much more to talk about in this area that we haven't already covered. There is one more item over there, and then one more item earlier in the level, but to get those we have to either jump over, which I think I do in this fast forward portion anyway, and then for the one earlier in the level that was guarded by flames, we have to get far enough in this level to be able to turn off all the fire that flows through every portion of this area. But yeah, you'll want to turn this crank before you go in that room with the fire, because this raises up the cauldron of iron that is in the center, allowing you to proceed safely along the ground floor. Anyway, one more fast forward and then we'll be at the Smelter Demon and we can talk about all of his lore. this guy takes me quite a few tries to kill because I am quite rusty with the Smelter Demon. And apparently Lucatiel's summon sign is not at this boss anymore, nor is it at the Old Iron King. So I'm starting to wonder which boss has been replaced for the Smelter Demon in Lucatiel's questline. Or maybe I actually missed a piece of her dialogue that's new in Scholar of the First Sin or something? I don't think I did, but apparently her sign is not here anymore anyway. Regardless of that though, we have to talk about all of the lore surrounding the Smelter Demon. To start off, he is a giant hunk of iron given sentience by the flame. The Old Iron King apparently built this monstrosity, but did not give it life. When the kingdom started to sink into the lava and flames, the entity that was lurking below the castle awakened. This entity apparently gave life to the Smelter Demon, which in turn ended up killing the Old Iron King, just like it killed me right here. This is what caused the Old Iron King to sink into the flames along with his castle, thus allowing the king to become what was known as Icarus Earth. If you don't recall what Icarus Earth is, it's the catalyst for the Great Soul that was hidden underneath the Iron Keep. The Great Soul that now resides within the Old Iron King boss at the end of this entire area. Basically, as the story goes, the Old Iron King built a castle that was too heavy for the land it was on, and thus it sunk into the earth below it, therefore awakening the entity that was resting within the flames. This entity not only gave life to the Smelter Demon, and gave way to the Iron King's death, but also used the Iron King's body as a catalyst to house its own Great Soul. And as it stands today, Icarus Earth and the Old Iron King are one and the same. And if anyone's interested, Icarus is defined as a fluid that flows through the veins of a god. So, in a way, the Old Iron King kind of became a god of the earth. Not the earth, literally, just the ground. And also, if you didn't know, the Smelter Demon can in fact be poisoned. So if you use poison against him on your weapon, you will have a much easier time getting through this fight. One thing to watch out for especially is this attack here. When he has his sword on fire, and he does that overhead smash, there is quite a bit of overhead auto-tracking. And just like the Alon Knights, if you don't dodge it at exactly the right time, you will be hit by it. This isn't because you failed to dodge, it's because the fire that comes off his sword in a line will actually hit you in an AoE radius, even if you dodge the sword itself. So, in short, not only do you have to dodge the sword, you also have to dodge the fire that comes off it. To add to this, when he's on fire, you can't go near him without taking minuscule damage over time. Every second that you're close to him is a second that you're losing health. The Smelter Demon is probably my most, I wouldn't say hated boss, but definitely it's the most annoying boss in the game. And to me, that's mostly just because of the effect the fire has on your character when you're close to him, and also because of the amount of overhead tracking this boss has. This is actually the third or fourth time I've fought the Smelter Demon now, except I've skipped the second and third tries just for posterity's sake, and finishing this episode as fast as possible, rather than it taking up a whole hour. But yeah, it's finally done. So we can move on with the rest of the Iron Keep and the Old Iron King, who I actually kill in one try because he is not tough at all. In fact, you could have put the Old Iron King here and the Smelter Demon as the final boss of this area, and I wouldn't even have thought twice about it, because the Smelter Demon takes 10 times longer to kill than the Old Iron King and is a lot harder. But anyway, we're about to wrap up this episode. It's been a bit of a roller coaster for me playing this because I'm pretty sure whilst playing this level I died and went to hell, for a little while anyway, mostly just because of that first part to get to the Smelter Demon, but now that that's over, it's smooth sailing for the rest. And I'm just checking out the porcelain shield here, just to see if it had any lore, but it just basically speaks about how it has the look of a pig, and not much else to it. So once again, thanks for watching guys, hope you enjoyed, see you next time.